Talk continues here on News Channel 5 Plus. Phone line still open, 737-7767, the number. Our line's actually wide open at the moment. If you'd like to get in, it'd be a short wait to talk about the 34-31 win over the Bills last night. The Titans' two-game lead in the AFC South at 4-2 over the 2-4 Indianapolis Colts, who they'll see in 2 weeks up in Indy. Or anything else. How did it change your view of this team? We can talk about that. But right now I want to get to Jeffrey Simmons because talked about a little bit off the top of the show, but he's a first-round pick. And he plays a position in which you can be impactful and it not necessarily show up in the stat sheet. When Ryan Tannehill plays well, you know it. The stats are there. When Derrick Henry runs like he did last night, you know it. The stats are there. Same for A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, all that stuff. Even defensive backs, Kevin Byard, he's playing much better this season. It plays out in the turnovers. He's got 3 in the last 2 weeks. But when you're talking about an interior defensive lineman, which is where Jeffrey Simmons lines up most of the time, it's sometimes difficult to gauge the full impact that he has because he's not always making the tackle. He's not always getting the sack. And we talked about this on the Electric Power Company's Sunday Sports Central on Sunday night. What type of an impact was he actually having on this defense? And I think the answer is if you talk to teams around the league, when they gear up for the Titans defense, he is the #1 guy they have to worry about. They have to plan their game plan around locating where he's going to be. And he is almost always taking on 2 blockers. Even more so, that means he may not be the guy making the tackle, but his ability to occupy those blockers opens the door for David Long, for Kevin Byard, for Amani Hooker, for Rashaan Evans, for Harold Landry. Those guys to make the play. And we looked at the game last week in Jacksonville. And he was disruptive. Tackles for loss, pressures. He actually was party to both of Harold Landry's sacks in that game by getting pressure in his own right. Landry finished the job. Landry tracked down Trevor Lawrence, but Simmons was a factor. They had another ball that looked for all the world like it was destined to be a touchdown. Simmons blew it up by pressure up the middle, getting his hand on the ball. It was nearly an interception instead because it fluttered downfield as opposed to being a spiral into the end zone for likely a touchdown for the Jaguars. And that was the type of impact you saw from Jeff Simmons before last night. It didn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet, but it was the impact you saw. And last night, in the fourth quarter especially, you saw the value of Jeffrey Simmons. The sack on the previous drive led to a 3-and-out. Titans get the ball back. They drive the field, take the lead. And then that 4th down stop at the end. Big-time plays from a big-time guy that has impact week in and week out for this Titans team, whether you see it in the stats. Last night, he played up to the reputation. Last night, he played up to what Titans fans hope he could be in the interior of that defensive line. I think he's done it more than we've maybe realized this season, but last night he got rewarded, and it happened at the most important and impactful times. Back to the phones we go. We say hello to Timothy. Timothy, good evening and welcome to Titans Talk.
How you doing, Mr. Steve?
Good. What's going on?
Okay, I got a question. You know, somebody was saying something about Julio Jones a while ago. And my question is, on that situation, they didn't keep coming along. But do we still have Mason Kinsey? And why don't we just mix a little bit Racey McNabb in on our offense? Because he's tall, fast, and, you know, I think we just need to go out and, you know, find a couple corners. But it's another corner they had in preseason. His number was number 7, and his name was Jones. And I think he did pretty good in preseason. I think we should give him a shot, too. You know, put him out there if we still have him on our roster or either on our practice squad. Give the other guys a shot. You know, they earn their way onto the roster in preseason. Let them play. You know, I wish Mike Vrabel would do that if these guys still around.
Yeah.
And that's all I got to say, Mr. Steve.
All right, Timothy, thanks for the call. Chris Jones is his name. He is on the practice squad as a cornerback, and I guarantee you this week he will get reps in practice and almost certainly will be a part of the game plan on Sunday. It is possible that they could go out and try to find somebody. John Robinson has also made trades in the secondary before. They brought in Desmond King last year when they needed help back there. So don't rule out an outside body that could potentially come in. But yes, Chris Jones, he's next man up this week for the Titans secondary, and I expect he'll be active on Sunday, and he'll have to play a role, whether that's special teams, whether that's cornerback, whether that's in a dime package. He's going to have to play a role for this team, and we'll have to see if the signs he showed back in training camp in the preseason can carry over to the regular season, and he can be a contributor to this defensive backfield. As far as wide receiver goes, Mason Kinsey's another guy who's on the practice squad. They haven't needed that body yet, but remember, you lost Cam Batson for the season last night, so potential you could see him, or maybe even Des Fitzpatrick at some point. And also Racey McMath. We did see him, especially in the Jets game when there was no A.J. Brown, when there was no Julio Jones. Could you see more of him? I think so. He has a very intriguing skill set for Todd Downing, for Ryan Tannehill, for this Titans offense. He's big. He can stretch the field. He can go up and make catches. But he's not going to be a key guy right now. You got to hope Julio Jones comes back. If he's not, Marcus Johnson has played well for this team. I think Chester Rogers has had a good role for this team. Those guys are going to have to make play. And Nick Westbrook-Akine, again, I don't think you can speak highly enough of the job he did late in the game last night, getting open, because that's not necessarily his role. But he got open at key times that allowed the Titans to drive the field and get that touchdown that ultimately proved to be the game winner. Back to the phones we go. Hello, James. Welcome to Titans Talk.
Hey, hello, good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I just want to say, man, hats off to both teams last night, man. The Buffalo, that was one of the best games this year I have seen. I mean, it went down to the wire. So those guys, they're going to win a lot more games. They're an excellent team. Their passing is almost non-stoppable. Every time they wanted to pass the ball, they could pass it. But just won a really good game. Glad the Titans come out with a win. Man, we kind of got beat up there at the end. We lost a couple guys. So just goes to show you what a strong team we played last night. But we did come out with a win. Y'all have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks, James. Appreciate the call. Big-time win, especially with everything that went against the Titans last night. And, man, wasn't it just a great game, though? When you look at 7 lead changes in an NFL game, back and forth, there was offense, but the defense came up with plays too. Both teams had big interceptions that led to points. The Titans were great in the red zone. There were some moments on the defensive side of the football as well. It was just a really, really good football game. I think the best Monday Night Football game, well, at least since week 1. That game was pretty special too, going to overtime. But it was a great, great game. It was one of the best games of the season. It's one of the best games in recent memory at Nissan Stadium. And shout out to the fans as well, because that atmosphere was terrific last night. I've covered the team for 11 years. I think that was probably the best atmosphere that I've seen at Nissan Stadium. Maybe that end-year game against the Colts when it was winner-take-all to get into the playoffs a few years back. But that was a great, great atmosphere. Bills fans showed up. They came to Nashville looking for a good time. I think they had it. They had fun for a while last night, but Titans fans were louder, they were more impactful, and ultimately they were the ones leaving with a smile on their face at the end of the game. Back to the phones and say hello to Kathy. Kathy, good evening and welcome to Titans Talk.
Hi, how are you?
You bet. I'm doing well.
I was really glad when the Titans brought back Avery Williamson, but I did not see him on the field last night. Was he not active last night?
He was active, and he just had a very few sampling of snaps last night. I think a huge part of that is when you don't show up till Wednesday of game week, it's really difficult to pull everything into your grasp and have it mastered to go out there and do that. I expect you will see more of Avery Williamson in the next couple of weeks, but here's the other thing. Rashaan Evans played really well last night, and David Long is playing out of his mind right now for the Titans at linebacker. They want those guys on the field a ton. Long played all but one snap last night at linebacker. That's how highly they think of him right now. So Avery Williamson, I think, has a role on this team. I think it will increase the more and more he's around and learns what they're trying to do. But at the moment, he's a clear number 3 and probably 4 when Jayon Brown comes back for this defense.
Okay. And also, Jim Schwartz, I know he's on the staff. Is he not on the sidelines during the game?
Jim Schwartz is in the press box during the game. Yeah, he's upstairs and kind of the eyes in the sky because Shane Bowen oftentimes is down there on the sideline with the defense. And so, yeah, Jim Schwartz is an eye in the sky coach for this Titans defense.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kathy. We appreciate the call. We need to take a break. We'll come back. More phone calls if you would like. 737-7767. This is Titans Talk on News Channel 5+.